Okay, so we are diving into the next part of section of chapter 21. So we just talked about the triumphal entry, and right after the triumphal entry, they begin the rest of their journey towards Jerusalem because they're not in Jerusalem yet. So we're starting in verse 10, we go through verse 16. When he entered Jerusalem, the whole city was stirred. Who is this? They asked. And the crowds answered, This is Jesus, the prophet from Nazareth in the Galilee. Jesus entered the temple grounds and drove out those who were doing business there, both the merchants and their customers. He upset the desk of the money changers and knocked over the benches of those who were selling pigeons. He said to them, It has been written, My house will be called a house of prayer, but you are making it into a den of robbers. Blind and lame people came up to him in the temple, and he healed them. But when the head priests and the teachers of the law saw the wonderful things he was doing, and the children crying out in the temple, Please save us, please deliver us, to the Son of David, to their Messiah, they were furious. They said to him, Do you hear what they're saying? Jesus replied, Of course. Haven't you read, From the mouths of children and infants you have prepared praise for yourself? So this is the second time that Jesus actually clears the temple. In John, we see, I think it's in John, John 2, we see that he clears it at the beginning of his ministry. Before he begins his ministry, he goes in and clears out the temple. And then he's doing it here at the end of his ministry. This, if you've ever been in church and you have dealt with church hurt or all kinds of things that you have seen that's wrong, this is why it's important not to just throw away the church in general and say you don't want anything to do with God or religion, because even Jesus didn't want anything to do with this religious spirit. He tossed it out of the church. He turned over the tables. All the things that the church was doing at the time, he abhorred because they weren't actually fulfilling. He was not. They were not. Excuse me. They were not actually embracing his heart or his mercy for the people, and it was abhorrent to him. So what was going on in this particular time is there was the money changers here. You have foreign exchange because they could not accept heathen money, that being the Roman currency, not in the temple. And so they would take the Roman currency and they would exchange it into what was acceptable for the Jews. And this was called, and I'm not probably going to pronounce it right, but it was called Tyrian. Well, they were taking advantage of the people, of course. Obviously, when they're doing this exchange, they would keep some of that value for themselves in that exchange. But on top of that, the pigeons were given as a way to be able to bring a sacrifice for the people that didn't have anything to afford. That was the whole reason why Jesus provided a way in the Old Testament for those that were poor. It was not to to overrule them so much with a heavy hand that they couldn't even bring a sacrifice. He was providing a means to bring salvation to these people in a simple way that they could still provide. But here in the temple, that's not what they were doing. They were taking advantage of the people and really doing spiritual abuse on them by doing the money exchange first, taking money from them there, and then also taking money from them by raising the rates of these pigeons. So that way it was really hard to afford. So they couldn't even really bring anything. They had a hard time paying for this. This was it was wrong. It was completely, when a lot of people talk about, well, they're just after the money. Well, this is what they were doing in the church. They were so after the money that Jesus says you are making it into a den of robbers. And the Greek there is saying a place to accumulate illicitly gained wealth. It was a commercial operation that was taking advantage and spiritually abusing the people. They were using their they were encasing everything that they were doing in spirituality, and it was wrong. And that's why God was so angry. And he said, This is not my heart. This was never supposed to be what my temple was about. It was supposed to be a house of prayer. In fact, the next very part is the blind and lame people came to him in the temple. And the blind and lame people were supposed to be unclean. They were considered unclean, so they couldn't enter into the temple. Yet they're coming in the temple, which is exactly what he wanted them to come and receive healing. That was the purpose of his tabernacle, for healing, for being able to be restored and saved, and grace and mercy to be poured out upon his people, because that was his heart. And so he was healing them there. And of course, the priests and the teachers of the law, they have this religious spirit and they don't want anything to do with that. They're very upset. On top of that, these people are calling him Messiah, and they weren't accepting him as the Messiah. They were throwing him out and saying, he is not the Messiah. He's doing things that aren't in accordance with how we want to do things. So therefore, he's not the Messiah. And he is the Messiah. So, that is, I think, yep, that covers pretty much everything for this part. And then we're going to get into the next part as they are going out of Jerusalem. So join with me tomorrow as we jump into verse 17.